Howdy, y'all. Welcome back to the Sanctified Podcast. Today, I want to talk about a saint that I actually just stumbled upon pretty randomly while I was looking for another saint to talk about. And to be honest, I saw the name and thought it was funny, so I decided to check it out a little bit. I was very surprised to learn the story of this awesome woman. Sorry if I mispronounced anything in advance, but let's get to Saint Kinga of Poland. Kinga was born on March 5th in 1224. She was the firstborn child of King Bela IV of Hungary, and she was also the sister of Saint Margaret of Hungary and the niece of Saint Elizabeth of Thuringia. And I thought that was pretty cool that she had two other saints in her immediate family. I feel like it's not that common, but I guess the more I look into saints, the more we'll discover if it is rare or if it's more common than I think. Kinga was known to be very devoted to her faith starting at a young age, and by the time she was 15 in 1239, she was asked by Prince Boleslaw of Poland to be his wife, and this is when the first legend or miracle is recorded for Kinga. Her dowry, which is the money that the family would give to the groom for marrying their daughter back then, was expected to be an immense treasure of gold and jewels since her father was the king of a large country. But Kinga knew her betrothed had vast wealth already, and so just adding more jewels or gold or just wealth in general wouldn't really help the people of Poland. Instead, she wanted a dowry that she could share with the people, so she asked for salt, since that was a rare resource in Poland, but very common in Hungary, at least at this point in history. The challenge, though, was going to be getting enough salt moved from Hungary to Poland. Kinga's father took her to a great salt mine in Hungary, and there she realized how she could get the salt to her future home in Poland. She took off her engagement ring and threw it into a deep cavern in the salt mine. She had faith that her Lord was the solution to the problem. After arriving in Poland, she had some citizens follow her to a field and instructed them to start digging. They quickly struck rock and informed her that they couldn't dig anymore. She then asked them to break off a piece of the rock and give it to her. They obliged and gave her the piece that they had struck. And then she took this piece and split it into a smaller chunk, and inside was the same engagement ring that she threw into the mine in Hungary. And when she examined the rock even more closely, she realized that it was salt. She had just witnessed a miracle, and her devotion to her faith only deepened from this point on. So we know Kinga was very devoted, but her husband, Prince Boleslaw, was also very devoted. Before she met him, she held a vow of chastity, and she wished to continue that into their marriage. The prince agreed, and together they lived a celibate life. In fact, her husband became known as Boleslaw V the Chaste. Together, through Kinga's requests, the royal couple built hospitals, churches, and monasteries, and included in these new expansions was the Poor Clares Monastery in Stary Saxe near Krakow. Through her efforts, Kinga was loved by the people of Poland, and in fact, after her husband died in 1279, the people wanted her to continue being their ruler despite the social norms at the time. It just wasn't normal for the queen to keep ruling after her husband, the king, died. Kinga wished to continue her life in faith, and so she dedicated her time to that. She requested admission to the Poor Clares Monastery that they started in 1257, and she served as the abbess there until she died in 1292. So I want to take some time to talk about the miracles and other incredible events that she performed or happened around her. And the first one I want to talk about is that while she was abbess, the community was suffering from a drought, and so they prayed for water, as you would do when you're suffering from a drought. She then went to a brook and traced a new path for it to follow with her staff. And after she finished, the brook followed that path that she traced out back to the abbey. Now, some of these miracles, I didn't quite pin down a timeline for them. So I don't know if they happened in her young life, while she was queen, or while she was abbess. But I'm just going to list them here in not really any particular order. And the first one I don't want to spend too much time on, but basically it boiled down to a promiscuous woman happened to be rather large, and somehow Kinga, who was reported to be very small and slender, lifted her and carried her to a wagon that took her to an abbey or place of reformation where she could change her ways and be saved. Now, two other events that took place that seem to be a little more than just coincidence or good luck. The first one is that when Kinga's castle was under siege by the Tartars and they ran out of wine, a man was preparing to journey through treacherous woods to get wine from Hungary. But as he was about to leave, two men emerged from those very woods with jugs of wine. They gifted the wine to the castle, and they were never seen again, despite efforts to track them down and thank them for the wine. The second event here that I want to touch on is that a young girl at the convent who was reported to be around 6, but the records aren't the most reliable for this instance. She was just learning the alphabet when she passed by Kinga. Kinga stopped the girl, gave her a book, and Kinga then asked the girl to read a passage from it, and the girl read the words flawlessly. She'd never learned them. She was still learning the alphabet. So it was a pretty remarkable thing to just happen so randomly. And this next one I want to touch on is a little more impressive than these last two. If it is true, of course. But Kinga saved Clara, who I assume was one of the women at Poor Clare's Abbey, but it's not really specified in the records that I tracked down. Clara fell on a nail that pierced her throat, and other women carried her body to Kinga. Kinga then made the sign of the cross over Clara and held a wooden cross over her body while she did that and prayed for her. And out of nowhere, Clara just came back to life and was miraculously healed from her injury. So, yeah, I don't really think there's a coincidence that you're stabbed in the throat and you just decide to wake up. It takes something pretty incredible to recover from that back in the 13th century. So, yeah, some of those sound like cool stories, but I don't know if I would quite classify them as miracles. I think they're a little more than just coincidences, but are they on the level of a miracle? Personally, I don't really think so. But some of those others, the Brooke finding a new path to follow, and especially Clara coming back to life, I would absolutely class those as miracles. One other thing, though, that puts her among other saints and people who have performed miracles is something that happened near and at the time of her death. It is said that she felt her end nearing, and she told other people. Other women started praying for her that she would recover or live longer. It was her time, though. She passed away. But at the time that she died, a fragrant odor is said to have filled the room, and her face became incredibly beautiful. And then where she was buried, a number of other miracles are attributed to happening around that area and happening because of Kinga. However, despite there being accounts of miracles happening around her tomb, I struggled to find any accounts directly attributed to that tomb. So my guess is there's legends and stories passed down through oral tradition of miracles happening around there, but I searched and I couldn't find any direct correlation to a miracle at her tomb in particular. So there's a couple other things about Kinga that I think are pretty interesting, and I want to include them. So the first is that Kinga was so revered, a chapel was built for her inside the Wieliczka salt mine, and it's actually pretty awesome looking. It's the chapel that is included at the intro to all of my videos. So if you've seen those, you have an idea of what it looks like. It's 330 feet underground. The chamber's 36 feet tall, and the area inside totals almost 5,000 square feet. The chandeliers inside of it are made of salt. In the chapel, there are salt reliefs carved out of the salt rock in the walls all around the chamber. The mine has actually been declared as a UNESCO World Heritage Site, so I think it's safe to say that it's here to stay. And if you ever find yourself over in the area, I would be sure to check it out. I hope to one day be able to check it out myself. And the other thing that I found pretty interesting was that even though Kinga passed away before 1300, she wasn't beatified until 1690. And yes, I had a few people correct me that it wasn't beatified. It's supposed to be pronounced beatified. So thank you for that. But yeah, she wasn't beatified until 1690, which is almost 400 years after she died. And on top of that, she wasn't canonized until 1999. Another 300 years passed. So there's 700 years went by before Kinga became a world recognized saint, which is pretty interesting to think that the miracles she performed were so well recorded and so impressive that they clearly stood the test of time. Saint Kinga is the patron saint of salt miners, which you could probably guess. She's also the patron saint of Poland and Lithuania. Her feast day is on July 24th. And as always, I encourage some discussion among those around you in the comments. Just keep it reasonable. Don't be crazy. But what do you think? Do you think those miracles that she performed, they're all miracles? Do you think they're coincidences? Were you able to find any records? Do you know of the actual miracles that happened around her tomb? If you do, I would love to hear about them, and I can recognize them and you in a future episode. Thank you for listening, and I hope you have a wonderful day.